see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
Hi, it's Edwin Rutsch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and today I'm here with Andrea Cohen, and I'm so delighted to have a chance to talk with you. Thank you for joining me.
It's a great pleasure.
So I wanted to kind of start off with a little bit just, about your background. I'd kind of looked on your Facebook page, and actually I have it up here, your Facebook page, and you have a page description on the compassionate listening page, and right. Then again you have a website, and I'm kind of bringing that up here. So could you just maybe just tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of your interests? And
right, I can tell you that first of all, my my website page is in the process of being updated, so it's a bit outdated. My background is really primarily in the field of social work, and then I was a filmmaker, a scriptwriter and filmmaker for a number of years. And then within the last 20 years, actually, I've gotten involved with compassionate listening, first on a delegation with Leah Green from the Compassionate Listening Project, and then following 9/11 is when I realized that the skills that I had developed and the interest I had developed in compassionate listening through my work with Leah was something that the world really needed, because violence was overtaking us, our lack of humanity, our separation from each other. And I truly became deeply committed to bringing this skill set of compassionate listening any place I could. So since then, I've been doing lots and lots of workshops, and just a couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Practicing the Art of Compassionate Listening.
I was going to mention that.
Thank you, Edwin.
Very good.
Which is, yeah, and it's, for me, it's about bringing the practical skills into daily life, so that it's not just a theoretical construct about how to make this world more compassionate, but how do you do it, particularly in those difficult moments when it's very hard to connect with that.
Yeah, so you had also done several films around this too that I'd seen.
Right. In the late 1990s, I directed a film called Children of Abraham, which is about our work in Israel-Palestine. I also have been very involved in a Jewish-German reconciliation project, and am featured in the film that other people did about that project. I wasn't a writer or producer on that particular film, but as a facilitator of the Jewish-German project, I was interviewed. And it's a very moving film about our work in a post-conflict zone in Germany. Very, very live project that, even though we haven't gone back there since 2005, I think was the last time I was there, the people who have been involved in that project over the years are still in contact. So it still has its healing connections.
Well, I saw that you had studied social work, and that kind of resonated with me because I had talked with a group in, there's a social work department at the Arizona State, and they they do like curriculum development around for social workers, and they kind of looked and did a study of the social work field, and they determined that empathy is like a core part of it, and that it hasn't really even been talked about a lot.
Yeah.
So they're kind of doing a whole project now to make empathy and I guess through extension compassion to be kind of like a foundational value for that field. So
makes a great deal of sense.
Yeah, so I don't know if during your time studying it, if that was something, is that field attract people who have care and compassion? And
I think that the field of social work attracts people who want to do good in the world, and it takes many forms. So having an MSW, which is one of the graduate degrees I have, provides a lot of flexibility for people to do things in the world that are about caring for other people. So that's the common theme.
Yeah, and education too. So you're an educator too, with doing all these workshops and
Right.
and educating through film and just a lot of different ways in your book.
Right. And I strongly believe that one of the ways to bring greater compassion in the world is by inculcating young children with what it means to have empathy and compassion. And there's been some research that I read recently that where they conclude that having kids bring self-compassion into their lives is even more important than the issue of self-esteem. So, and self-compassion has a real ripple effect. And so I think, you know, when you had posed the question about what are ways, I can't remember how you posed that question, but how do you build a culture of empathy? I think it really starts from the inside and starts with self-compassion.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wanting to explore in these dialogues, is like, how do we create more empathy in the world, more compassion, and really transform society so that these values become core values. And so I'm kind of wondering, is, you know, was there a moment where you kind of discovered you had the power of empathy and compassion in your life? Was it kind of a gradual, you know, process, or did something happen where it was like one of those aha moments?
You know, I can't remember an aha moment. I think as a very young child, I've always had a deep feeling for other people and had the desire to connect with other people on a meaningful level. And, you know, I remember, I think when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, some guy came to the door, and I happened to be there when my mother opened the door, and he made some comment about my ability to connect. And I don't remember the details of it, but that image has stayed in my mind. And so I think it's just something perhaps that I was born with, is this almost need to connect on a meaningful level. And that's been reinforced over time, that desire to connect is central to my being.
Do you have some kind of peak experiences? Like, that sounded like one of the early memories. Were there other, you know, kind of along the way where it was, where you kind of learned that extra deep insight into the nature of connecting and compassion?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good question. And I'm sure that images will arise after we're off this Skype conversation.
Oh yeah, so I kind of sprung it on you there. So yeah, it happens to me. It's the same way. I have the same experience. It was not like any one moment of, you know, some people have these moments. They'll say, well, I went to this workshop and I'd never been heard this way before.
Right,
and it's
right.
like I'm thinking, wow, this is really something I have to, you know, learn more about.
Right.
And so they had that moment. And for me, I'm not even, you know, it happens in these little incremental moments, and, you know, there's
Right.
little insights here and there. So
Well, and I think one of the key things is that there are moments when I realize that I'm in that heart space of deep connection, and it makes me very joyful. And like, yes, this is what the world is about. And how meaningful it is that I'm yet again having this experience in a situation where perhaps I could never have anticipated it. For example, in doing the Jewish-German project, when, you know, my heart opened very clearly to people who had been other. All of my life had been other. And those experiences have stayed in my heart ever since I was first in Germany in 2002 doing our project. And the same thing, I started doing some work with a women's prison outside of Seattle. Again, it's a group of people who I have not had contact with, is people who have been incarcerated and felons, And when I went in to teach compassionate listening in that environment, they were just human beings who were hungry, hungry for somebody to be with them without judgment, to impart some of the skills that are so basic in life. And they immediately saw the relevance of those skills in their families, with other residents. And we were just human beings on this journey together. And so I've been in the prison a number of times and plan to continue to do that. It's something that I feel passionate about right now.
Well, what I've been doing recently around, empathy and compassion is I've been finding it a lot of fun to play with metaphors.
Yeah.
So empathy is often described as the metaphor of standing in someone else's shoes and looking through someone else's eyes. And so I'm wondering if you have like a personal metaphor. You can't use that one because that's already been taken.
It's been used.
It's all been used. So we're kind of looking, this is a little bit of a creativity,
Right.
test. So it's for either empathy and or compassion. Do you have like a metaphor? And I could share mine, which is like empathy is like a cornucopia.
Uh-huh.
In the sense that, when I connect through empathy with someone else, it's like this rich experience of all these experiences. It opens the door to this whole cornucopia of experiences and delights.
Right. I think when I think of the term empathy and what is it like and what's a metaphor, I think of the exquisite attunement of strings, violins, that when you're exquisitely in tune, when you're right in sync with the other person. And that could be, somebody might describe it as standing in their shoes. And having music in my background, there's nothing like being in that kind of attunement. And it really is about being in attunement with where another person is at. And how do we find that place of commonality, that place of common humanity, where we are one, just like that exquisite attunement of instruments to one another. So, and we are instruments.
Yeah,
so I think that's...
Yeah, just becoming attuned. Empathy is like becoming like instruments, strings becoming attuned to each other then.
Right. And it's an exquisite attunement, I think. It's something that is so subtle that sometimes, just by speaking the words of empathy alone, it doesn't mean that energetically you're necessarily really attuned. It's a feeling. It's an energetic, on an energetic level, that exquisiteness is there. And when I feel it, I know another question you had posed was, how does it feel in the body when you're really attuned, or for me, attuned in that way? And on some level, it's an incredible relief that, yes, I'm back home in the human family. This is what all humanity experiences if we allow ourselves to let go of the barriers between us and just rest into the truth that is, which is that at the core there is a common humanity. If we allow ourselves to see it, feel it, experience it.
So it's kind of resonating with our common humanity exquisitely, and that's so beautiful when it can happen at a deeper level. Yeah.
And another thing that I think of when I think of this is, this isn't a place that we always lived in. Life might be boring if we were always in that place. I think the challenge is working our way back there in the heat of conflict, which is truly an opportunity for each of us to exercise those muscles or that consciousness about, okay, I'm not there. What do I do now to get back there? And so it's our gym. It's our spiritual gym on some level. It's that kind of an opportunity. And one that I actually welcome in my higher moments. It's an opportunity that I welcome.
Well, that was kind of a metaphor for empathy, and I know you're in the compassionate listening project, working with them, and part of it. And so there's empathy and compassion. Do you see like a difference in the metaphors between those two? Like, what would be the metaphor for compassion?
Compassion, when I think of compassion, I see empathy and compassion very similarly. And in advance of our conversation, I looked online to see how are people defining these things differently, and I didn't see anything uniform about that. We always talk about compassion as being with the suffering of another, being able to be with the suffering of another. I see. So, and I've heard of that same description or a similar description in terms of empathy. So I don't actually distinguish it very much.
Okay.
I think it's all about, hopefully at its best, it's all about the same energetic field.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yeah, well, a lot of people ask about that. There's, seems to be kind of confusion. So I'm trying to like explore the relationship just to have a little bit of, more clarity. But I would say, for me, what it is in terms of your metaphor of the strings, it's like if you're feeling joy, and I can, tune to your joy, and we're resonating on that joy, and it's just, our joy is almost like doubled because of the resonance. It's like joy on top of joy from the connection is so joyful that the compassion would be if your string is a string of pain and suffering, and that I come and kind of resonate with your pain and suffering, that resonance, that same resonance is just applied to the suffering. And it adds and it lightens, perhaps in some way, the suffering. My mother used to always say, sorrows shared or sorrows halved, joys shared or joys doubled. So
that's beautiful. So that explains, Edwin, why you're doing what you're doing. That was a very wise mother.
Well, she actually said that because she was always trying to get me to be married, and that was her sales pitch. I'm not married, but I have a long-term partner. So,
okay, good.
So it was always about why it was important to kind of have a partner, someone, because for that very reason. So.
Right.
And now finally the neuroscientists have caught up by talking about oxytocin and all the science behind how that actually works. So
right. And of course, in an intimate partnership, that is the very best place to practice compassion. And it's just an ongoing opportunity for us to look at ourselves and unpack our own challenges in the face of another person, which is about connection and intimacy and deepening intimacy.
Yeah, and creating that resonance. So if that resonance, a finely attuned instrument, is the metaphor for empathy, what would be the opposite then? Just not attuned, and what would that feel like?
Absolute chaos, and it's not feeling right. I have this. Some people like atonal music, and I have a very hard time with that. I love for the chords to resolve into something that's pleasing. Now there are other people who love the drama of being in an atonal situation. They love the drama of conflict, and so I think of just that jaggedy unevenness of, something that makes you feel uncomfortable like that. It's like something that might make me want to close my ears and perhaps close my heart, as opposed to where the resonance is about opening.
Just the last interview I did, the person I was talking to, she actually mentioned that experience. She said it's like your fingernails on the chalkboard.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, it's painful. It's like you just
That's
feel
right.
the pain through your body. Yeah,
Right. You feel it every place. Yeah.
yeah. So
So,
that's the question here: is how do we go then from the chalkboard and the pain, the dissonance, and the chaos to that state of empathy and compassion? And that's kind of the work that you've been doing
right.
is just exploring how we get from that state of being to the other state of being, and what insights do you have about that work for doing that?
I think the first step is to notice when we're out of that place of alignment, when we're triggered, when we're being reactive. What's the first way to notice that? What do you notice in your body? What do you notice in your thoughts? And as soon as we notice it, you know, in compassionate listening, we talk about something about going to the balcony. Once we notice it, then we can look down on the drama. We can look down on what's happening. We can look at what's happening inside of us, hopefully make a little bit of sense of it, and then make choices. Ah, I see. Yes, I'm triggered by that same person, that same behavior, that same language that often triggers me. Now what am I going to do? Recognize it, calm myself down, use a centering practice that helps me ground back in my body, in my heart, so that from that place of calm, I can make a better choice about how I want to respond, so that I'm not contributing to this atonal chaos, but I'm bringing that spaciousness, that field of calm that will probably have an impact on the other person. Because we know from, you know, the research at HeartMath and so many other places that the electromagnetic field that's emitted from our heart is contagious. That is true, as is the chaotic field. And so, you know, it gives each of us an opportunity to be that beacon of calm in the face of chaos and in the face of an increasingly chaotic world around us.
Just kind of a technical thing. I'm hearing a little bit of a hum. Is that? It's not like a vacuum cleaner or something.
No, but I can tell you exactly what it is.
Oh, okay.
Somebody is mowing our lawn.
Oh, okay.
I have no control when they come.
Okay, so we just know what that is at least then.
Yes.
So we
yes.
just go with whatever goes. This is, you know, that's how
Right.
it works with this program here.
Right.
So
and they're finished. They'll be finished in just a few minutes.
okay. Well, okay. So what is it you're saying then? It's a very felt experience then that you really. It sounds like to deepen empathy, you're going to have had a kind of an awareness of empathy and compassion as a felt sense. So you can kind of ground yourself in it and be aware that when you're not in that state. So it's a very feeling, felt bodily sensation then.
Right. Right, and I think that, you know, we carry our bodies with us at all times, usually, and now it's getting louder, and so, you know, for anybody who might be listening, hopefully they won't be too distracted by that, by the noise of the lawnmower. But so, you know, there are yeah, I think what you said is right. There are sensations that we feel when we're triggered. I use the word triggered out of that place of open-heartedness. And so what might I feel when I'm triggered, say, by my husband? I might feel agitation. I might find myself unable to be clear thinking. I may be in touch with anger or blame or judgment. And as soon as I feel something like that makes me want to close down, then I can, if I'm in a good space, a good enough space, I can say, uh-oh, I'm beginning to close down. I'm feeling that I don't want to connect. I need to breathe. I need to breathe. And so you don't have to be very trained in order to breathe. You just have to breathe and concentrate on your breath for 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and really allow yourself to get back into center rather than, you know, staying in your head and in that place of judgment and anger or whatever else, you know, you've kind of manufactured here, whatever story you've you know, manufactured about why this person is wrong and why I'm the victim.
Well, I hear that comment a lot. I have this this dance group here, and it's very much into the body, and you know, it's where I really, it helps me to kind of connect to my body and let go of a lot of stresses and strains. But the person there, Ava, she always talks about, well, let's get out of our head. And once I interviewed Dominic Barter, who you're familiar with, and someone in the workshop said, well, I want to get out of my head, and he said, I like my head. You know? So it's like, you know, the head is sort of like a metaphor, it seems to me, in one way. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what is, you know, what is it a metaphor of? And or maybe you're meeting physically, you're feeling yourself in this part of your body. And so I guess what I'm actually just saying is trying to explore a little bit about what the head is. And you know, it's like we don't want to judge the head as being bad. You know, it's like judging, you know, and that's a little bit what I'm trying to get away from and try to say, well, it's not the head is bad. And that's what Dominic was kind of saying. It's that there's something going on here. And what is really going on when we talk about being in our head?
Yeah. And well, I think that's a good point. And I think that in our work in compassionate listening and in my work in general, it's about integrating the wisdom of other energy centers. So there's nothing wrong with the head. It's just when the head alone is at play and the heart is forgotten and the wisdom of the body is forgotten. And, you know, we often go through life with our heads cut off from the rest of our being, and there's so much wisdom in the rest of our being. And I think in the West, we've cultivated the intellect, we've cultivated the mind, but we haven't done such a great job of cultivating the heart and cultivating the wisdom of the rest of the body. So it's all about its integration. I think so much of the problems in our world are about separation into us and them. This is good, that's bad. We're good, they're bad. It's not that the head is bad or the head is good and only the heart is good, or only, you know, it's about the whole and not ignoring important pieces of the whole in order to find the greatest wisdom that can help our entire planet out of this ungodly mess that we're in.
Yeah, so it's that quality of the head is maybe like when we start judging and say, this is good, that's bad, you're doing bad, I'm doing good. And that kind of seems to take place, you know, in a felt experience, you know, more, I mean, I feel it physically. It's like you're talking about physically. I can feel where my consciousness is, and it feels more in this, you know, area of my body. So it's a felt sensation being in the head. And
right. The other thing about the head is that we have a lot of stories about life. We have stories about how we've been wounded in the past and how other people have been wounding us. We have stories about how the world really is. Those stories generally live in our head. And if we're not aware that these are simply stories, we go into an automatic mode of reinforcing kind of these negative stories that we've been carrying around. And people like Eckhart Tolle, I don't know how he pronounces his last name, but he talks about the pain body. And it's almost like this backpack of old, deep, painful stories that we lug around with us unless we are aware enough to notice when we're doing that. And then we can put them on the side and not darken the present moment with the pain that's lived in the past for us.
So the head is maybe more like a repository of past pains. And
Yeah, in part. I mean, there are
In
many
part,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, there are many things that the head holds. I mean, the intellect is wonderful. You know, that ability to be a discerning thinker is really, really, really critical. You know, we are judging people. Not all judgments are bad. You know, we have to use judgment well. So that means, you know, judgment in the sense of discernment. And that our heads are very critical to that. So I just think that we don't want to separate the head from the rest of our being.
Yeah, I'm kind of really going on this head part because I think it's a really important, something to really kind of be explored and to be articulated. Because for me, it's very relevant too, because I can feel it when it happens, and it has a feeling of a little bit of alienation and detachment
Right.
quality to it. And one thing I've noticed is I think it has a lot to do with fear. That the fears that in my exploration, there's so many manifestations of fears, and for me, a lot of them kind of hang out in trying to protect
Yeah.
myself from those fears through detachment and protecting and so that.
Right. The head is a repository of past pain, and it's where we create our fear of the future. So it is about that. And I think when when I'm in a situation when I find that I'm really caught up here and I don't really want to be there, what I find myself doing is I place my hand on my heart.
Mm,
And just that act of putting my hand on my heart reminds me, oh, there's more to me
mm.
than simply my head. And let's activate that center so that I can be more fully present in this moment and not live with the pain of the past or the fear of the future.
Yeah, so that's kind of like bringing your body, your awareness. So it's bringing the awareness to what's going on in your body, kind of around
Right.
the heart, and you
Right.
can do that with just being aware of your breath.
Right.
If it's fearful and anxiety and
Right.
whatever suffering, and then bring the awareness to the heart, and then also we just physically bring the awareness to the heart. So,
Right.
uh-huh.
For me, for some reason, over the past many years, it's become automatic. And I'm thankful for that. But I might be in a situation in a group when I realize, oh my God, there's all this stuff out of control, and
Hmm.
people are going at each other, and I'm not that verbal sometimes. I'm a bit of an introvert and deeply spiritual on a non-religious way, and I will find myself, if I'm in a group where there's a lot of conflict, automatically going like this. And then by going like this first, and I don't even think about it, then do begin to breathe. And then what I can do is, I don't know if people are aware of the work of Tonglen, which is a Buddhist practice. It's a breathing practice and I think of it as of a way to kind of purify that negative energy that's out there by moving it through my heart and back out into the world intentionally as a cleaner, more loving, more holding of the whole kind of energy. And I find myself doing that. And I don't know if it has any impact on anyone else other than me, but it does help me.
Yeah.
And I think the research on the heart and the electromagnetic field that's emanates from the heart, the research would say, yes, it does have an impact on the field. And particularly if there are a number of people in a group where there's a lot of conflict, but there are a number of people holding that energy of the heart open, it's palpable. People feel it. And we've gotten that feedback on our delegations, both in Germany and in Israel, Palestine, where we do listening sessions. And the people who are listening to people who have challenging stories are people who are skilled at heart-to-heart connection and listening deeply. And we've gotten feedback from people we've listened to. One man who was a Holocaust survivor who said to me, And he had told his story to many people. And he said, I don't know what you people do, but you have what it takes to begin to heal our planet. And thank you. So
yeah,
it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, that resonance. It's kind of going back to your metaphor. If you're in a group and everyone's discordant and there's suffering and pain and fear and all the chords are going all over and there's the scratching on the
chalkboard.
On the chalkboard, it's like, what do you do? And it sounds like to kind of get a sense of your own resonance is
Right.
you kind of bring your awareness to your heart.
Right.
And then kind of you start creating that space where you can maybe influence the whole room or the environment.
And you create a beautiful symphony, really, of where people are gentle with each other and listening to each other and supporting each other. And in the work environment, co-creating together from that place of ease and trust. I mean, that really does happen when people are skilled in this way. And, I know this from people I've worked with on projects, is that when we have similar practices of, and I know compassionate listening inside and out, that when we can do our practices together, our relationship calms and creates that spaciousness so that we can work more efficiently, more effectively, more trustingly, and the work just shines. What we create together shines. Whereas if I'm, for example, co-facilitating with somebody where we're, kind of at odds with each other, the whole field picks that up. Everybody picks that up. But when we're in sync and we're trusting each other, then it's a beautiful space that we create for another person or for other people.
Yeah, it's a beautiful metaphor. I think because you can really expand on it. Like you started talking about the business environment, and in terms of the definitions of empathy, I kind of see four parts. There's the self-empathy, which is a little bit like self-attunement, right? There's
right.
mirrored empathy, where I start attuning to you. I'm starting to emotionally attune. There's kind of imaginative empathy is I think, well, if I was in your situation, how would I be playing? And then there's empathic action, which is like, now we're working together and we're starting to do something together. We're going to create some music here together.
Right.
And that's really like a business, in a work environment. A work environment's goal is to, bring everybody together to work as an orchestra to get, produce something.
Right.
And so if you can have those skills, you create a smoother workflow and more efficient and more enjoyable and more delightful.
Right, right. And we've done some training, some workshops in the business environment that have been very, very helpful. And now I'm working with somebody at the community college level to integrate. I just changed the subject on you, and I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. That. Great, wherever you want to go. This is a dialogue, so.
Yeah. In any event, working with somebody at the community college level to, and we're going to have a little interruption here, unfortunately.
It's okay.
Okay. So to actually teach these skills to younger people at the community college level. And so there are so many environments where people are really hungry, and I said this earlier, but really hungry for skills to bring into their lives so that they can be more effective and be more effective in their families, in their workplaces, in their communities. And I love to meet that hunger with the skills that I know and love, which are about compassionate listening. So
what is, they're kind of outlined in the book. You've outlined them, but perhaps you could kind of go into them a little bit more, give a bit of an outline of what are some of those skills. You'd already started with, feeling yourself, coming to your breath, and what are other kind of tips around that?
Right. Well, we have 5 core practices that we do work our exercises around. and they are cultivating compassion, and that's really starting with self-compassion, so that when we're in the heat of conflict, to first recognize that it's going on, and before going to solution, having compassion for ourselves such that we can open our own hearts and reconnect with the heart of the person we're in conflict with. Respecting self and others is another core practice that we have. And that's really about recognizing that we're not here to fix someone else when we're listening to them, but giving them the opportunity to be heard so that they can find their own solutions. And that's really the ultimate in respect. And it's also the ultimate in self-care, so that we're not on a fix-it mission all of the time, which is generally ineffective anyway, particularly when people haven't asked for it.
Could I kind of bring that back into your metaphor? Because I love your metaphor, because I think the metaphor kind of gives it a nice shape, in the sense that if I'm playing my instrument and you're playing yours, the fixing is like, you're not playing it right. Let me tell you what to do. Let me tell you how you should be moving. And it's like, I don't want to hear how you think I should be playing, And so maybe what kind of helps in that situation is just reflecting. Oh, this is what I'm hearing, a little bit. So that's a little bit of the empathic, mirroring, reflecting. And it's like, oh, I can hear myself better by hearing, how I'm kind of sounding to you, or something like that.
Right. And reflective listening is something that's deeply embedded in some of the exercises that we do. First, listening to self, and then listening to other. So even in the instrument metaphor, I'm kind of playing with this. If I'm sitting there and I'm playing and the notes are half note off, and if we are just listening, eventually both people will probably hear that it's not quite right and self-correct on some level. But back to our 5 core practices.
Yeah, well, I was just... please, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I'm enjoying the metaphor. Actually.
Okay. Oh, good. Because it really get a lot of fun out of those metaphors.
Yeah.
So thanks for going along with that.
Oh, sure. Do you play an instrument, Edwin?
I don't. I just dance. So it's a little bit like the body is the instrument.
Right. Well, it's the same thing. How can you be in partnership? You have to feel where the other person is when you dance.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Another of our core practices is developing something called the fair witness. And we talked about that when I talked about going to the balcony, that the fair witness is being able to step out in the heat of conflict to see what's really going on. It's like the stage at a theater. I'm looking down at the stage and seeing, oh, well, there's Andrea. She's doing the same thing. She's triggered by the same person, the same story. But so developing that capacity to quickly be able to step out and look at what's going on, because from that place is where choice arises. If I can really see that how I'm reacting and make a choice about, well, I don't want to react that way. I want to react some other way. Another core practice is listening with the heart, and that's integrating. We often listen with the head to figure out, well, what's right, what's wrong, but listening with the heart is a whole other way of attuning to what's beneath the surface of the words. What am I picking up about the person's essence? What do they value deeply? And we find that when we listen with the heart and reflect back what we hear at the deepest level, that creates an incredible opening for the other person to go where they need to go in order to deal with whatever they're dealing with. And that's where the gift of listening is to create that spaciousness, that reflection at the deepest level, so that somebody can take their journey, further their journey, to find their answers, not my answers to their dilemma, but their answers. And then the last of our 5 core practices is about speaking, and speaking from the heart, or speaking, what's my truth? Do I have the courage to speak my truth gently, without the intention to hurt, but I don't want to lose myself. You know, listening, this whole practice is not one of being passive. It's really about showing up fully from that deepest essence that is who I am in the world and who I choose to be in the world, and showing up in that way. And when people are empowered, feel empowered to show up fully, I think that's when we can begin to truly co-create a better world. So,
well, that last one, yeah, that last one is really something I'm kind of looking at personally, because I know that it's like even in dialogues with people, it's like how to kind of bring up what's really going on for me. And, you know, you had some tools there for kind of getting connected. But it's almost like speaking. I mean, I've had that experience where I'm in a group and it's like there's something that's not said and I'll just say it. And it's like the whole energy, you know, I just connect to what's kind of like there, and the whole energy just changes because I've said that thing. But it's not just that I've said it, but I've kind of like brought the essence of the energy to it. And it's like almost like magical. And it's like, I don't know how to maintain that on as regular of a basis as I would like to, because it's so much fun, but it's sometimes kind of scary too. It's like there's a sense of fear, anxiety about saying it, or fear that I'm not going to be heard, or, you know, there's all these different things that kind of inhibit that.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think also of a metaphor for how we are in the world is like an accordion. We open and close, and, you know, we're not, and, you know, I think it's a Rumi poem, and I don't know if I'll remember it completely accurately, but it's about if we were flying and if our arms were all open like this, or if the wings were always open or always shut, we wouldn't be flying. But we're opening, we're closing.
Oh,
we're opening,
flapping. Yeah, there's like that metaphor that that life is kind of like this flow, the emotional flow. Yeah, that's nice.
Right. And so we're always doing this dance. And, you know, we don't want to be paralyzed in either. We can't be paralyzed. I mean, if we don't want to be paralyzed. And so what it is really becoming more proficient at the flow. And when we're not at that place of being completely, you know, naming what's going on all the time, having compassion for that, and knowing that in the right moment, and it might be the next moment, that's when I'll have the courage to say what I've been thinking. And I had an experience like that in a meeting last night, where we were in the middle of doing something and something was nagging at me. There was something I really wanted to say, and finally I said it. It was something about, the specific isn't really important, but I finally said it, and it was that aha for the whole group. Thank you for saying that. But believe me, I'm not always there, because there are times when I'm shy and I don't necessarily trust myself. But as long as there are enough moments when I have the courage, then I'm feeling, okay, I still have it. I'm still capable of doing that. And, you know, that's the dance of life.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think that kind of nourishes or nurtures that is the more you kind of do it, and that I'm heard in a safe kind of environment. Like I've done, been in environments, you know, like workshops, like you're talking about, you know, that where I'm really heard very deeply, and it's almost as if that like I'm filled with a reservoir of empathy and then trust and kind of the spaciousness that I kind of get. And then it kind of lasts for quite a while, you know, that I go into the world. And it seems that having spaces for that to kind of get I call it the empathy battery, to kind of filled, then that gives me the energy and the space to, you know, in those more difficult situations to kind of be present.
Right. It's being well nourished, you know, and if we drink from the well enough, then we have more capacity to access that nourishment that water gives us when we most need it, when there's a drought.
Yeah, when there's a drought, emotional, yeah,
Yeah.
and kind of and create those, you know, hidden pockets. Maybe like
Right.
squirrels have those hidden, you know, yahi, you know, I don't know if that maybe that's the
These
best metaphor.
oases, we have these oases of
Oases,
everything,
yeah,
oases
yeah,
of passion to
mm-hmm,
draw from.
yeah.
Right.
Because I've been, you know, in environments like with the Occupy Berkeley here, and it was a really a lot of I gotta stop this program here. A lot of conflict there. And you can see people who've been in a stress situation is their tolerance for any extra stress. I mean, just sets them off.
Right.
And you can see that if unless you're through, you know, we need that. I guess that kind of ties in with what I'm looking at. Is we really need a culture, a cultural shift where these values, these are, you know, empathy and compassion are explicit, you know, conscious values
Right.
that we restructure society to create the environment to make this just a normal way of being.
Right. Right. That furthers the resilience that we're all going to need more and more in our lives. And that's why I think some of these practices of, say, meditation with children are really important, and cultivating compassion rather than blame are really important with young children. I try and do it with my grandchildren. And in fact, last weekend, I had one of my grandkids, an 8-year-old, sitting there and meditating and really going inward and enjoying it. And we had a phenomenal conversation from that place. So I think the more of us who are practicing these skills and wanting to bring them into our worlds, whatever, you know, into our families, into our workplaces, that's how we can make a difference. And so for me, that's my deepest commitment, actually, is to my family.
Mm-hmm. Creating that environment within your family and
Yes.
supporting that, and
Yeah.
and have your
Yeah.
home. Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful talking about this, and, you know, having you share, because you've worked on this for, you know, Compassionate Listening Project has been around for quite a while and has done this
Yeah.
wonderful work and been
Yeah.
real, I think, really at the forefront of this whole, you know, movement and supporting these values and creating a curriculum and articulating it, making the information available, and
Right.
doing hands-on, you know, going to Israel, going to Germany, going to all these, you know, conflict situations. So I'm
Right.
really pleased to, you know, just to have a chance to hear and have
Yeah.
you share some of your insights and experiences.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to do one more plug for the book, if
Oh
I
yeah,
can.
please.
It's called Practicing the Art of Compassionate Listening. It's based on our 2-day curriculum. Very practical exercises about how to integrate compassion easily into your daily life. You can go to the Compassionate Listening Project, www.compassionatelistening.org, and purchase it off the website. So, and I wrote it for that reason, is to make it something easily accessible for people so they can bring these practices into their daily
Yeah,
lives.
it's a good place to start with this. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Okay, and thank you for doing this.
Okay, thank you for taking part, and we'll keep the energy going, and we'll
Stay
keep.
together.
We're gonna create that band.
Right, we'll do dancing and music and, you know, make a beautiful world.
Great. Okay, so
Okay,
take
take
care.
care.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
See the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.